Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, broadcasting from my office in Moriarty, New Mexico, and Dennis Burgess producing the show and broadcasting from St. Louis, Missouri. So, any new news out there, Dennis, last week? I just got back from splicing 12 pieces of fiber on this new project I'm doing. Yesterday we ran, about 2,500 to 3,000 feet of cable above ground, getting ready to plow that into the ground today. But just been real busy with this fiber project, excited about it. Anything going on in your neck of the woods?
You know, not a whole lot. We got plenty of projects, of course, as we always have projects. Some neat stuff, definitely some interesting items. We got a whole bunch of new Microtech products in. You were asking me about those LHGs. We got a whole crap load of those in. I don't even know where they're going to put them all. Actually, a lot of them are going to go right back out the door, which is always a good thing. But, you know, we definitely have some neat projects. You know, most of the type of stuff we really can't talk about. We have a really good new ruckus deployment. Looks like 18 locations that we're doing a large-scale ruckus deployment for a big community, that type of stuff. We've been working with some other companies. We have another company that they're doing the facility. It's a rental facility, like RVs, that type of things. And mostly are fairly permanent installations is the way they got it. But they're doing they're running new power to all the facilities, so it's all going to be dug up and trenched, and they're going to go ahead and run fiber to every box, and then looks like we're probably going to drop in a number of ruckus APs so that they have wireless in the trailers and things like that. So lots of really good stuff. You know, as I say, lots of really great projects. That's why I like doing the job, you know.
Exactly.
You never know what you have. We just did we just turned on a one B11 link, and then there's another backup B5 link for a location that needs as close to 2 gig as they can get for a large. They're expecting like 20,000 visitors and I think 40 APs. We just turned that up for another customer. That's always a fun job as well. So there you go, man.
Sounds like a stadium.
Yeah, I can't say that. I cannot confirm nor deny that. How's that?
Yeah.
So
any innovative products that are outside of the
well, you know,
we
did release a new product this week. This product is a exclusive product by Link Technologies, and what we have is what we call the Power Link. And this product is a brand new ultra small form factor 24 volt PoE out unit. So it has a little bitty unit. I wish I have some. I just don't have them sitting here. But what it is it's very small. It's like, you know, that big, maybe 4 or 5 inches long, maybe 1.5 inches wide or so. But what they are is they are a 24 volt PoE out. So you take your Ubiquity or your Microtech, whatever the case it may be, and you plug it into there, and it actually has a battery inside the unit, lithium battery, powers your radio. While it does that, though, it also has a wireless access point in bridge mode for you to connect to. So you can plug it in, power up your radio, do all your programming wirelessly prior or while somebody's running a cable. They're fairly inexpensive. We have 8 and 15 watt units. Pricing starts at $119 a piece. They also come with a little USB LED light, like a little, not like a flashlight, but it's a little bendable light that helps you see at night. And then it also has a USB port, so you can actually plug in your phone and charge it from that unit if you wanted to as well. So not only can you connect to your radios, but you can also charge your phone if you really need to.
So what's the application? Is it like you're out in the field and you want to program up a radio real quick? It provides the power out to do that while you're driving down the road?
Well, yes, you could do that, but in our case, what we use them for, or what most people use them for, is to literally plug in a CPE. So they go up on the roof, they mount the CPE, they know they're going to install. Now they plug this in, it powers it, and usually what happens with our guys is one guy is out actually basically programming the radio, making sure it has line of sight, making sure it has the best signal. The other guy's adjusting it, and then once that is done, then they finally run the cable. So they do basically all the pre-programming prior to that, and they don't have to have some. We've seen some of these types of products come out onto the market, but most of the products are usually big and bulky. Number one, they don't have a USB port, which they really should have. And then on top of that, they the products, most of the products we see are not actually products. They're actually, they take a DeWalt battery and then they put a power injector and they wire it up and they hot glue it all and all that kind of good stuff. And it's, don't get me wrong, it's really neat stuff. But this is actually probably one of the pretty much one of the very first commercial products specifically designed for this. Now there's other products out there, but I think with one of the reasons that we set ourselves apart is that we have that 2.4 gig access point that is just bridged. So Microtech Discovery works perfectly on it, etc. If there's the CPEs giving you DHCP, works perfectly over this basically bridged AP. So there you go. We usually get over 4 hours of runtime, so we usually don't have any problem with batteries. I mean, you're turning them on and programming it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So most of the time, even if you do that 4 or 5 times a day, it's not a big deal. So
that's cool. I was wondering when someone would come up with that idea, because what I use these little boxes like you're describing that put out power, and you can jump start your car with them, and they have multiple outputs where you can plug in a regular Transio PoE into it and do that. But yeah,
isn't that like this big box? It has like a car battery in it.
The big box with the battery. Yeah.
I could just see trying to carry that up to the roof.
Used to do it.
Oh, no. Anyway, but we do have those on sale. They're actually on our website already. They are. We've shipped the units we've had, and we have more coming in next week. So there we go.
Well, excellent. Well, if you got nothing else to talk about like that, on the show today we have Jimmy Carr. He's the Chief Executive Officer of All Points Broadband, and he's also a volunteer for WISPA. He's the State Coordinator Committee's chairman, and want to welcome Jimmy Carr to the show. Jimmy, can you tell us a little bit about All Points Broadband before we start into what the idea is behind the state coordinator and what your guys are trying to accomplish with the state coordination?
Sure, yeah, and thank you both for having me on, for everyone who is listening today. All Points Broadband is a hybrid fiber wireless ISP. We're based in Ashburn, Virginia. We serve customers in Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia. Primarily use fixed wireless for the last mile, but we're doing more and more fiber. I'm very involved as a volunteer at WISPA, and happy to contribute to the industry through that. And thanks a lot for having me on today.
You bet. So tell us a little bit about what WISPA is trying to do in regards to state coordination of issues that each state deals with.
Yeah. First, let me just point out 2 things that are going on at WISPA right now. I know a lot of your members, your listeners are members of WISPA. So there are 2 very important things going on right now that I hope people are aware of. The first is that the WISPA board election is going on. I know Steve is running, I'm running. There are a number of really great candidates. So no matter who you decide to vote for, I hope that everyone out there who can vote will go ahead and take the link from Trina and vote and participate in those elections. The other issue is, WISPA, in collaboration with some other trade associations, has commissioned a group called the Carmel Group to do a study on our industry. They've recently distributed a survey to WISPA members and others, and I can't emphasize enough to all your listeners how important it is that they participate in that completely anonymous survey. That's really going to be important for gathering additional information about our industry that we can use as WISPA volunteers when we're meeting with the FCC or on the Hill to really give them a more concrete and specific picture of our industry and what we're doing and how important we are. In terms of the activities of the WISPA State Coordinators Committee, most people will know that historically, just as a question of where we can have the most impact and most efficiently deploying limited resources, WISPA's efforts on the kind of legal and regulatory front have been nationally focused. We spent a whole lot of time lobbying the FCC for rule changes. For example, we had a huge success a couple of weeks ago with the Connect America Fund Phase 2 reverse auction. Steve Coran, myself, Ted Osborne, Jeff Kohler, John Allen, and Mark Radabaugh of the WISPA FCC committee, led that effort, and that's an example of WISPA having real success at the federal level. We also, have the annual fly-in trips, and we, now have a federal lobbyist. So we do a whole lot as an organization in Washington D.C. because the national level, what happens there really affects all of our members. Alex Phillips asked me about a year ago now to take over the State Coordinators Committee, and recognizing that just because of resources and what makes the most sense, WISPA is always going to be primarily a nationally focused organization. But we also wanted to begin building up our presence at the state level, and there are a number of things. PUCs are at the state level, access to right-of-way, SCADA deployments, other issues like that are handled at the state or local level. And so we wanted to find some areas where we could have a targeted impact at putting together information, best practices, white papers about issues that WISPs might face that aren't going to be specific to any state, but will impact the greatest number of members. And so what we did earlier this year, actually just a month or two ago, we distributed a survey to WISPA members in order to try and identify what the issues were at the state or local level that are of greatest interest to WISPs. And we're going to use that information for the rest of this year as the State Coordinators Committee to focus on the discrete small list of issues where things that we can do centrally can be of use to WISPs at the state or local level. And so we put out the survey. It recently closed. We had very, very strong participation. Some 160 WISPs replied in pretty short order, which is a very good turnout. And we listed about 11 or 12 things that we thought as a committee might be on people's list, and it also had some open answered questions. But we asked people. So, for example, of the following issues, what was the most important state level or local level issue that they were having a problem with? And so, those issues we asked about were pole attachment rights, obtaining access to public right-of-way, whether or not state and local entities are complying with federal law regarding zoning approval for commercial towers, whether or not fixed wireless is eligible for state-level financial support for broadband, whether or not there are any challenge process rules for state-level financial support for broadband, the process by which fixed wireless operators can get onto state or locally owned vertical real estate, state-level regulation of VoIP offered by WISPs, obtaining ETC status, dealing with SCADA deployments, state and local taxes, or state or local zoning laws. And the results of the survey, there was no runaway winner, but the four issues that seemed to be of most concern to WISPs were: first, obtaining access to vertical real estate that was owned or controlled by state or local governments. The second was ensuring that SCADA deployments or future smart grid deployments are done in a way that is spectrally efficient and preserves as much of the unlicensed bands for broadband deployment as possible. The third was whether or not fixed wireless is eligible for state-level broadband deployment funding. And the fourth was obtaining access to public rights-of-way. So the full committee, the State Coordinators Committee, hasn't yet finished digesting this and coming to its conclusions. But our next step is going to be to pick probably two of these issues and put together some white papers, frequently asked questions, best practices, a kind of nice little professional white paper, so that a WISP who's having a problem with a local government or with a state agency, that state agency may be saying, oh, well, we can't let you on our public safety towers for the following reasons. And what we want to do is arm WISPs with a good professional document that they could then hand across the table to the state they're dealing with and say, well, actually, here's how it's done in other states. It works just fine. These are the approval practices that are, best practice and have been found to work. And hopefully, here are a couple states. Here's the individual at a couple states you can talk to about the process they went through to begin letting WISPs on their vertical infrastructure.
Very good, very good. But you guys felt that getting on the state's towers is the biggest vote from the organization, correct?
Yeah, that was. There's no clear winner, but that was the highest vote getter. So, we asked people to rate things on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of importance, and that was the only one that was above 4. So that did seem to be the most important. And I know in Virginia, we're pretty active, our WISP community in Virginia. This is a big issue for us in Virginia, and just at industry conferences and the WISPA shows, that does seem to be something that a lot of people are concerned about or would like to have access to. That infrastructure is out there. We can do a lot of good with it if we're giving access to it on reasonable terms. And so it wasn't really a surprise to see that be pretty high on the list.
So when you guys put together your white paper, how are you guys putting that together? Are you just soliciting some folks that you guys know that have had success in other states of how to get on that without it being too painful for the WISP?
Yeah, so for that issue, for example, if we decide that's going to be one of the primary issues to move forward with, we would ask around, probably starting on the committee, does your state do this particularly well? And so we'll try and find examples from 2 or 3 states where the process has worked well and been efficient, and we'll gather additional detail about the background and history of how that happened in that jurisdiction, and then try and condense the key points from a few states where it's worked into a white paper.
Right, and you mentioned in your area, Virginia, have you had some success with getting on the state's property? Or some of the members of your state coordinators?
It's challenging in Virginia. I know, Alex Phillips, WISPA president, has been working on this. I've been trying to help him. We find that the public safety agencies, the state police in particular, who have great towers all over the place for their public safety radio, it's a very difficult process to get on those towers. You are technically allowed access, but as everyone knows, there's a lot of daylight between officially allowed and on the one hand and actually allowed to get up with a reasonable process that doesn't take 3 or 4 years on the other.
Right.
I was going to toss this out, is that in our county, we actually have another public entity called Jefferson County 911, and it's, of course, our 911 services. And they did a whole bunch of really great stuff. Basically, they got all the police department, fire departments, emergency responders all together, and they gave back a whole bunch of frequency, low-band frequency, and they ended up getting this huge chunk of, I think, 1.9 gig. So now it's all unified communication. They got a whole crap load of money, and they dropped 16 brand new minimum 300-footers in the county, in one county. And it's really interesting trying to work with them. We actually have contracts with them, all that kind of good stuff. But the very first thing they say is, oh, we're not a government entity. We're a private entity funded by government. And we get the water districts are exactly the same. They're very similar to what they call, I think it's P3 organizations. If anybody's, I believe that's the term. But basically the government actually comes in and says, we're going to fund to build you a water tower, to build you water pumps that are big enough. We're going to help fund that, and we're going to have you pay us back over the next 20 years or 10 years or whatever it may be. The government, the city will do that, and then there's a organization, a private organization, that actually bills each individual person, actually does all the meters, actually does all the rest of the public utility. So even though it's technically a public utility, they sit there and claim, well, we're not a government entity, so we don't have to let you on towers, etc. In many cases, and this is just that it's a private-public partnership is really what it is. But we get that a lot in our county just by itself, and this is one of those things that it'd be really nice. You think as a Title II incumbent that we are now, you think we would have access to that, but technically, quote, I'm going to use air quotes here, try to do air quotes there. Technically, it's not a public water tower or a public communication tower. So it actually works out better because we don't actually have to deal with the government. We actually deal with whoever maintains the towers, basically.
So are they? Do you think that they're more reasonable, Dennis?
I mean, they have been reasonable. Now, there's definitely been some, how can I put it, some oddities that always occur, if that makes sense. And I can't go into. There's actually other legal issues that they have that we won't get into, but all that kind of good stuff. It's actually been easier to deal with a private utility, and we have actually done this a number of times with other WISPs, where there's a public water utility or a water district, whatever you want to call them, and they're going to replace, the example I'll use, they're going to replace SCADA gear for the telemetry monitoring system. And we come in and we basically say, there's this WISP, they want to be on your 4 towers. We're going to do an equal cost contract. In other words, the WISP is going to provide you data connectivity back to your office for not only your telemetry, but also your security cameras. So we can actually put security cameras. You can actually view them live from your main office. This is actually a session that's actually going to happen at WISPA Palooza this year. So FYI, in case you don't know, you should go to WISPA Palooza. But the examples, this is a 3P or P3, whatever you want to call it, private-public partnership, in which the WISP actually funds the entire installation of 4 or 5 towers. They get vertical real estate to get on. The water district gets telemetry, plus now they're getting cameras. And the very last part of that, though, is a lot of times the antiquated systems are all serial-based. In many cases, the telemetry monitoring systems. So as Link Technologies, we actually have several resources that we use that do command and control systems. So we come in with a brand new command and control system that is literally cheaper than replacing all their SCADA radios and their licensing fees. So all of a sudden, we can give them an IP-based controller system, command and control system. They can use on their Android phone now to turn on the generators, to turn on the water pump, all that kind of good stuff, and see all that right on the engineer's phone. The water district gets security cameras and all the telemetry monitoring, and overall, the WISP gets the vertical real estate. So we do some of that, but again, it's really odd. The other thing in Missouri, anyway, is if there is a public water tower, so there's a city water tower not far from here, the city of DeSoto, and this thing has antennas on it like crazy. There's like 2 cell carriers on the water tower already, big bulb water tower with the nice, wonderful walk ring around it, whatever you want to call it. And we approached them to put equipment on. They're like, oh, no, you can't because we're a public service, And I pretty much quickly said, by Missouri statute, if you decide not to lease it, that's fine. You can't lease it to anybody. But you can't lease it to one private entity and not another private entity just because you don't want that other one on there, unless there's a technical reason. And you don't have a technical reason. So that's exactly what the state coordinators try to help the state level WISPs with, or as much as possible anyway. Because I've taken phone calls from Missouri operators going, hey, we're trying to get on this city water tower. The city owns it, but they're saying that we can't get on it. But there's already a paging company up there. As soon as you let one private entity on it, you have to let another one, at least in Missouri anyway. So really good stuff. And if you are a WISPA member, then you should also make sure that you have joined the state-level committee for your state, because there is a lot of really local resources that you probably can get into and really help you guys out if you do that. But you have to be in the right place to find those resources.
Right, and that segues into my question for Jimmy. What are who are some of the states that have really done well with this? In New Mexico, we're kind of fractured. We don't really have any kind of organization, if you will, and it would be nice to have some sort of organization with the players in the state. But I guess my question is, what are some of the successful states that you've seen, and what did they do to get where you could call them successful?
Well, we haven't yet really seen and haven't done too much digging down to this level of specificity, but, I haven't yet seen a state that I would say has a statewide process that really works well. That's not to say there isn't one, but as Dennis alluded to, this is the ownership of these assets is something that varies from state to state and within states.
Right.
Some counties, they have they maintain their own water tanks, and they maintain, the sheriff owns the public safety assets. Other counties, there'll be, 3 counties will come together to establish a water authority that owns the water tanks, and there's maybe a regional public safety body that manages the public safety towers in 2 of the 3 counties, and so it's very variable. We've heard of a number, and I don't have the names right with me, but there are a number of regional authorities in various states that have got where this has worked, and there's an efficient process. Frequently, that is because either the WISP is providing, a kind of a groundbreaking or path-breaking WISP came in and offered to provide connectivity for the monitoring systems, and also threw in the video camera. Those seems to be things that are very valuable to these authorities that WISP can provide at very cost-effective rates. So typically what we've seen in the more successful areas is one WISP took the time, had a relationship, got on an asset, began providing connectivity and video monitoring or other services, and someone working for the authority that owned the assets, then went to their boss and said, hey, we should do this at other towers, and then somebody from legal got involved and said, all right, well, we need a master agreement. That's the way that we're going to do this everywhere. And it kind of evolved organically within each organization. And so what we're really going to be looking to do is to find examples of, several of these authorities or just places where it's working well, where a WISP has, gotten a process together with whether it's a public safety commission or a water and sewer authority, and got a template and a process together that works. I had something else I was going to say, but I just lost my train of thought.
Right. I guess that's kind of where you guys are pushing to with the white paper idea, is to get the story you just explained out there and give us something that we can approach these people that are closed-minded, saying that'll never work. Well, it can work, and it's worked this way in this jurisdiction.
Yeah, a lot of times when you go to negotiate or to get on these type of assets, and I've seen it in my business, and I know others have, the answer is technically, yeah, you can get on the tank, and eventually you get a lease, and it's usually a lease that's designed for a mobile carrier, and there's a lot of negotiating to try and make it more look like a WISP lease that's consistent with the equipment and the size and the weight of the equipment we use and what the issues are that are important to us. But then, the folks who've never done this before on the public sector side have questions about, well, what type of attachments should we be using to mount equipment? And, they don't know. And so they're looking for a resource for themselves so they don't have to engage a consultant or do something else that, this is the way things should be mounted. This is the way the lease should be priced on, wind load and weight as opposed to number of antennas, because we use a lot more antennas typically, but they're a whole lot smaller. And so the white paper and the best practices that go along with it will not only be to help WISP, but also to be, there's a more objective third-party document that a WISP can present to an authority or other, public sector counterparty and say, a lot of these issues have been solved before. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's look, here's a document that will tell you what's happening elsewhere in the country and has worked well, and this should give you some comfort to help us move forward and get this lease signed so that we can expand broadband.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, starting at once getting the system started and a process in place to begin with is probably it is definitely one of the biggest things that you can do. You have to start somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing we found is that fortunately for Link Technologies, we have a number of resources, and unfortunately for a lot of WISPs anyway, they don't have access to some of these resources. They don't have the contracts that we already have in relationships. But the example would be, a lot of times we can facilitate that because we can go, hey, why don't you at this water district, I know you're apprehensive about doing this, but why don't you call this guy? He's at a water district in Missouri or at a water district someplace else. Call their main number, you'll get the water district, and all of a sudden they start communicating, and all of a sudden they realize, well, this is somebody else is doing it. Why aren't we? And believe that or not, that is a really it's a major factor in many cases, and it's very, very simple to do. And that's really what, like Jimmy, what you guys are trying to get accomplished. You're trying to get that white paper. You're trying to get that resource available to those types of people.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right, Dennis. It's more like over time we'll be building a library of these type of things so that a WISP who doesn't have a lot of free time. I don't think there are any who do, but a lot of extra personnel or, the ability to hire a lawyer and track this stuff down. Instead, you can just, go to the online library of WISPA white papers and resources and find the one about getting access to, publicly owned vertical real estate, read it, get up to speed on what some of the issues are, and then have a toolkit and some documentation to go see your water authority and get the process started.
Yeah. There you go. Well, what else you got for, I guess, Jimmy? Is there something?
Well, are there any questions on the message board? But so you said that there are some state organizations. I think Colorado, didn't they put on a trade show up there? I think Dennis, didn't you go to that? Or was that sponsored by WISPA? Or what was that all about?
You're talking about the Colorado State meeting?
Yeah.
There was so that was actually a group. How can I put it? In actuality, that was a group that was. I'm trying to think how to explain it. That was actually another operation that put on that trade show, is what it was, and they did that so that, of course. They would have their show, and I think that was the Mountain Connect show. And while we were there, WISPA was going to have a representative there anyway, and there was plenty of Colorado WISPs. They also decided with the Colorado State Committee, I believe, that they went ahead and had a statewide meeting. So they got a room and basically said, "Hey, if you're a WISPA member and you'd like to organize a small event in the state, that way everybody can go." And they did. I mean, it worked out. So the big point here is that, yes, there was one. Did it work out? It definitely worked out. I did not personally attend it, though.
Right.
That's something. There's been some questions about the state level meetings. A few years ago, WISPA made a major push to have state level shows. That was probably two or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's something else. The state level and the regional shows are something that come through our committee. We've decided, just practice has been that depending on the state, of course, you really got to get the time of year right when you have the state level shows, because we want to make sure that the state level shows don't distract or detract from attendance and participation at WISPA America and WISPA Palooza. And so there's been, sponsors and others the vendors can get a little bit of fatigue going to too many shows. And so we tried to step that back a little bit and have fewer state level shows, do a couple more regional shows. For example, we're having at the end of August a regional show for Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, North Carolina, and D.C. We're having that in Northern Virginia. We're trying to reduce the level of state shows, have more regional shows, and also make sure that the timing of those is such that it doesn't detract from WISPA's main events, which are, of course, WISPA America and WISPA Palooza.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing. And for those of you that don't know this, it is really difficult to plan something at a location that you can get some food at, that you can actually have some drinks at, etc., on even a state level, to get all the parties to come and to have that. It is actually very difficult to do this. Been there, done that, and it is good though, because as the state level, it really helps people. So take that as it, I guess it is, right?
Well, I'm looking at it, from, like I told you about the situation here in New Mexico. We're kind of a fractured group, and what is the? I mean, it kind of sounds like a grassroots effort to try to get all the people to come together. And you don't have to have a show, but I mean, you could just have a meeting at a coffee shop or at one of the ISP's conference rooms or whatever, just to visit and talk about what they've been going through. I mean, is that kind of the genesis of how these state committees could grow?
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that we've been encouraging. So, each state where there are WISPs has a WISPA state coordinator. And typically that individual or other, WISPA operators who are active and engaged at the state level, that's the type of thing that will grow organically on a state list. People say, hey, let's get together. And so, as you were saying, Steve, the less, short of having a big show with sponsors and vendors participating and renting a venue, et cetera, we have been encouraging people, and there's some WISPA financial support for buying lunch or stuff like that, to have these kind of lower key, more informal, just get together, get to know your friends and neighbors in the industry, that type of session. We've been pushing that. Some of it depends on the size of your state, the number of WISPs, how far people have to drive to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard to do, but it can be done if needed.
And a lot of that, it takes a volunteer. As Dennis alluded to, the resources that go into any show, whether it's 10 people in one state or 800 coming to Vegas, it's very taxing on the WISPA staff to put these together, and so it really depends on somebody at the local level, whether that's the state coordinator or just some other WISPA member who wants to be engaged and is willing to volunteer some time. But you need kind of a local champion to make these things, to take charge of them and really make them happen.
Right. Does WISPA and your committee have any resources to facilitate that initial meeting to try to get the guys to show up and prove that we're not all enemies, we're all fighting a common cause?
That's something that the state coordinators have access to. There's not a lot of financial resources to do that, but we can help facilitate.
I'm not talking about financial resources. I'm just talking about talking points of, sending out a letter to these guys from the state coordinator saying, hey, you're a member of WISPA and you're in the state. We don't have an organization or any kind of organization. Let's just get together and talk.
Yeah, and that's something, state coordinators can do that on the state lists, or, a WISPA member who wants to organize that can send out an email to their state list. And Dennis mentioned earlier the importance of being on your state list, and I would really encourage everyone to join your state list because depending on your state, some states there's a very active state list where people are talking about these issues, and if you're not on that state list and there's going to be a regional get-together or an informal gathering of WISPs in your state, you probably won't know about it because that's the type of thing that we communicate at the state level rather than on the main national email lists.
So, is there something on the website that allows me to check, hey, I'm in the state of New Mexico and I would like to be in the state committee?
Oh, well, all you have to do is you log into the WISPA, the new membership portal thing, and you go, I forget what the menu is, but where you control your list options, you just go down to the state level list and you add yourself to it. And it's the same as, you can do a digest or get it in real time and turn it on and off and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just so you know, if you go to the WISPA website and you go to the mailing lists, there is a PDF there that you can get to very easily. That PDF basically goes through, here's how you can log in. Then you go to your My Account and Manage My Account, and then there's a mailing list, account actions, and then there's basically a whole list of email accounts that email lists that you can be on. You could actually subscribe yourself, etc. And all that is fairly well documented as well, just for your knowledge, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So
Jimmy, you're going to be at WISPA Palooza, correct?
That's correct. Wouldn't miss it.
Is there anything that you folks are going to do, maybe a breakout session or something like that, to talk about going forward with this and growing it organically, as you say?
We're going to have, there's not a specific panel on this, but as Dennis alluded to, a number of the issues that are important from the survey that we're going to be working on are already the subject of panels at WISPA, and so we'll have someone. We should have someone on each of those panels who can, talk to about what WISPA is doing on that particular issue through this effort.
Yeah.
Excellent.
In the particular session that I was talking about is a public-private partnerships working with municipalities. Is the actual title of the session that it looks like I will be a panelist in. But the big point there is. We that is just one of the many sessions at WISPA Palooza, and that is one of the ways that you can come and really learn a lot of information very, very quickly, especially if you need to attend. I'm telling you, it's well worth it. And I know plenty of people that sit there and tell me they go there for the first time. I had a customer that went there the first time last year, and they go, I don't know how I did not go to that every year that I knew about it.
Yep.
He said, I learned more that one day, than I did, what was it? I learned more that one day at WISPA Palooza and it would have been worth me going for the past 5 years. It paid for itself. So It is what it is, but I hope everybody really attends. And Jimmy, is there any plans for a state coordinators meeting at WISPA Palooza?
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that at our next meeting. We will have, probably a 1-hour session for the members of the State Coordinators Committee, and just for an in-person get-together to continue what we're working on.
Gotcha. And if and you do have states that are not or do not have their own coordinators still, correct? We don't have 50 coordinators.
Let's see. We tracked down a member. That was one of the first things I did, was try and recruit a state coordinator for every single state and make sure everyone who'd signed up to be a state coordinator still wanted to be one. I think we now have a coordinator in every single state, but there may be 1 or 2 missing. I don't remember. We got to north of 40, and I declared victory and moved on because it's only but so many hours in the day.
Oh yeah. So my big point here is that if you are a WISPA member and you are not on your state list, 1, get on your state list. 2, if your state list is not super active and you would like to take more responsibility, I guarantee you that you can start talking on that list, and I guarantee you can help out the state coordinator if there is one. And if there isn't one, I bet you can hit up Jimmy, and Jimmy goes, well, hey, you're doing a great job. Get it done.
Right? I would be glad to recruit anyone. Anyone, any of your listeners today who want to get more involved at the state level can just shoot me an email. It's jcarr@allpointsbroadband.com, and I'll be happy to get you plugged in to get more involved. This is a volunteer-driven organization, and people have time and they're willing to contribute. That's very valuable to us, so please contact me.
There we go. Stephen, do you have anything else?
There's the vote out there, and and this question to you too, Dennis. I don't believe I've got the email to vote on any of the guys. Can you vote online through your portal on WISPA?
So you're saying you did not get a ballot?
I do not believe I did.
Okay.
Or the Carmel Group survey.
Okay. I think the Carmel Group survey, I do not believe, is going out to everybody, and it may be going out to principal members only, which is very possible. So I probably would not have seen it, so I can't sit there and tell you too much about that. As far as voting, you're going to see a email from Election Buddy Elections. So search your email for that.
You should have already seen it.
Yeah, it should already be there. So maybe you've seen it and you didn't take it. I don't know. The second thing is make sure your account, go to your WISPA.org, log into your account. Make sure you have a proper email address. You'd be surprised how many times, it's going to invoices, and the invoicing person has already voted for you. Just FYI. But definitely go find out what email address it's going to so that you know which email to look for. We can, or the WISPA admin staff at admins@wispa.org can resend that one time. Okay? So make sure that if you make sure your email address is right, they'll probably help you out, but you can email admins@wispa.org or give the WISPA phone number a call. And they will be able to help you out as much as they can, for the most part, to get that taken care of. It is extremely important. Those went out on the 19th. So if you're looking on your emails, July 19th is when I got mine at 8 a.m., 8:05 actually. So I'm sure sometime in there is probably when all of them went out.
So search Election Buddy survey.
Yeah, Election Buddy should find what you need. But it's very important that you find that and you vote. If you cannot find it, verify your account, your email address, and then go ahead and hit up the admins@wispa.org or give them a call, and they'll be glad to help you out because we, of course, need a good voting turnout.
Yes, absolutely. So, Dennis, a little bit about WISPA Palooza dates, and are we at the most expensive part of ordering if you haven't yet?
I do not believe so. Give me 1 second. Let me check. Too many windows open on the other screen here, if you know what I mean. So WISPA Palooza, currently the registration. It is not the most expensive. I believe it goes up again August 1st. I could be wrong on that. I don't see it right in front of me right this second, but you already missed the peak discount. That was July 1st. So unfortunately, if you haven't registered, you need to register now. Otherwise, again, in a few more days, probably it's going to go up to its final price, etc. So you do need to register, get your hotel room, etc. There are rooms still available. Last time I checked, anyway. Remember, it is October 11th and 13th, through the 13th. That is the actual WISPA Palooza. And I'm going to toss that up on the video for everybody here. Let's do this. There we go. 11th through the 13th is the actual WISPA Palooza. But note, we also have Fiber Weekend. So if you do fiber, this is Saturday, October 8th and 9th. So there's actually a complete separate session. It is separate from WISPA Palooza. Just keep that in mind. Just being held the weekend beforehand, what we call Fiber Weekend. And this will get you into all of the fiber stuff, everything from right-of-way discussion to vendors, contractors, planning your first fiber builds. There's actually some hands-on fusion splicing that's going to be occurring, so you can get a little bit of training, if that makes sense. Vault placement, fiber trays, I'm just kind of going through here, trenching, boring, plowing, and these are all breakout sessions that will be occurring the weekend before, and then of course you stay for the actual WISPA Palooza, and that starts on Tuesday, October 11th, and there is an agenda already posted now, which is really, really good. There's a lot of really great stuff. I love this one, how to troubleshoot over the phone with grandma. That just sounds like
that's quintessential.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It just sounds like a session I don't like. It makes me shudder.
That's why you're out of the WISPA business.
Yeah, maybe. But there's also some really good stuff. There's a virtualization, advanced virtualization panel for anybody that's needing virtualization stuff. CLIA information will be out there, as well as DMCA, some accounting stuff out there. We're also going to get into the E-Rate, Lifeline, RUS, and SBA programs, which is really good stuff if you're looking to get one of those types of loans or etc. There is a whole bunch of other stuff. You can read it all online. It's all on the agenda. Business challenges from 1,000 to 3,000 customers. Business challenges above that. Power solutions. So if you're looking at wind, solar, battery backup, all that kind of good stuff, what are those types of power solutions? Probably one of the really important ones, especially since this is right before the December deadline with the FCC, is the compliance and enforcement of the open internet rules. So that's a really good session. I think that'll be very, very well attended as well.
That'll be a packed house.
Yeah. And there's some stuff for employees. So it's not just send your text. I want to make sure, maybe I put that out there. This is not just let's send a tech and let him go. First off, as a business owner, there's all kinds of stuff. Labor costs, total cost of employment, employee engagement, keeping good employees. For your techs and your engineers, your tower guys, there's OSHA safety program information that'll be out there. There is the power solutions, as I said, how to help with better education of home Wi-Fi, things like that. For the business owner, again, the private-public partnerships. We have managing bandwidth strategies, federal forms. What should you be filing? Form 477, by the way, comes up in October again. And for those of you that are owners that are interested in either buying or selling, there is a session for buying and selling WISPs. And it will have a number of people in there that is bought and sold WISPs. So really good stuff inside that. For the network guys, there's networking best practices, there's troubleshooting, spectrum updates, there's tracking down interference, again, bandwidth strategies, managing bandwidth, all that kind of good stuff, RF planning. And then I go back to your, maybe not your help desk people, but your office manager. Again, going back to these employee and how to find and hire the right employees. That's a session. What do you need to do to be in compliance with those open internet orders? So it's not just a, hey, let the owner come and have a good time, because that does happen too, but it is definitely a lot of really great information across the board for many different people.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. So, all righty, man.
Well, I think we could wrap up the show. Jimmy, is there a way that people could contact you if they're interested in, I think you mentioned it once, but could you tell us again how they could get in contact with you if they're interested in setting up a state that doesn't have a coordinator or...
Yeah, sure. The best way to reach me is Carr, C-A-R-R, at allpointsbroadband.com. If you forget that, you can just email the admins at WISPA and ask them to put you in touch with me, and they will do the same thing.
Well, excellent. I appreciate you being on the show. This is, to me, it's kind of important because I don't think out here in the Wild West of New Mexico we have anything that's really put together, and I'd like to see if I can get my group of fellow WISPs to do something.
Great. We would encourage that and love to support it.
Cool. And we'll see you in Las Vegas. Dennis, you got anything else? Any questions from the chat?
Nope. We're all pretty good on the chat, all that kind of good stuff. The only thing I have left is, remember, next week we have Brian Smith from Advanced LLC coming on. That show will be at our normal time, 11 a.m. Central, on Wednesday the 3rd.
Yep. All right, Dennis, so wrap us up. Everyone have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.